you missed out on an awful lot in terms of social situations and fun and events and things?
Definitely. Not just with work. I mean, work has been a massive thing because I watched people progress and do things that I knew I could do, but that I just didn't have the confidence and the speech to do.
So I wanted to start off by letting you listen to a clip that's really positive turning point for me. It might not sound it because I'm being honest on radio about holding myself back at work and the struggle that I had. But for me, it was a really lovely moment because for 30 years I had not been honest about having a stammer. I had tried to hide it. I have a covert stammer, which is when I would swap words around in my head before I would speak so that I didn't say words that I struggled on. One of the most feared situations for me would be that someone would recognise that I had a stammer, so I would do everything in my power to avoid that. So there I was on BBC Radio Newcastle admitting the fact that yeah, I had something wrong, but I had worked on it with the support of Northumbrian Water and the Maguire programme, which I'm going to go into a little bit later. 1% of the population have a stammer, and that is around about 70 million worldwide. It's International Stammering Awareness Day on the 22nd of this month, and I always try and do my part to raise awareness. This is part of that, and hopefully by me taking on a challenge like this, it will inspire others to really push themselves and to be honest about who they really are. Like with any story, it has a beginning, so I would like just to give a bit of an overview for those who don't know very much about my story. From about the age of 8, I realised that I had a stammer. I had an accident which left me unconscious, and I remember really waking up from that and suddenly having a stammer. Stammers can be brought on by trauma, by shock. Some are hereditary, some people are just born with it. Lots of people just live with it quite happily, and the majority, I would say, find that it does hold them back, like I said in that clip. So here I was as an 8-year-old with this disfluent speech. I had already made a nice circle of friends, so that wasn't really a worry, but it held me back from a lot. I stopped putting my hand up, for example, even if I knew the answer to something. And I didn't want people to see that I had a stammer, but it's quite hard to swap words sometimes. My name, for example, I could never say without a struggle. And you can't swap your name around, although I did at a training course for a company that wasn't here, by the way, but I'll go on to that a little bit later. So, as I say, I was in secondary school. I would avoid things like school productions, so I took up learning how to play the clarinet and the saxophone, which I know is a little bit of extreme avoidance, but I could then put myself forward to be part of something that wasn't speech related. There were times that, like I said, that I couldn't change words around. So, for example, I helped a teacher once with something which made me late for a lesson. I got to my lesson and was asked why I was late. I could sense the anger in her voice, and everyone was looking at me, and my response about helping this teacher came out in the most worst way that I would have ever imagined, and the stammer was really bad. She reacted by repeating what I had said in exactly the way I had said it. And it's a moment that I think I'll always remember, because I remember the faces of all the children in the class just laughing at me, and it was awful. I remember sitting on a cubicle floor in a toilet at 8-year-old, wishing that I could just disappear. And yeah, it was quite a low moment for me. I went on to high school and did really well academically. And I got through things okay. But it came to leaving school and I really wanted to go to university. How could I ever manage at university if I couldn't say my name? So I ended up getting a job on a youth training scheme with Northern Rock, as it was there, and working at their head office at Gosforth, which I worked there for a long time before coming to Northumbrian Water. And for a large part I worked as a typist in a typing pool. Ideal job if you've got a stammer. I was in a desk of about 6 desks put together with one phone in the middle, and I would purposely get on a really early bus so that I could turn the phone to point towards somebody else's desk. So I was going out my way to have to plan for the day, and I had to start off hours earlier than I needed to, just because that fear of using a telephone was so great. Just to give you a bit of an example of that fear, because all people who stammer have the same fear, and it's usually the biggest one is the telephone. If you were frightened of spiders and somebody was to put a tarantula on a desk and it was heading towards you and you couldn't move, that is the fear that I had every day in my working life of picking up a telephone. So it was a struggle, but it was a job that I could manage. I did have to answer the telephone, and unfortunately I did stammer out of control on quite a lot of occasions. I would travel home on the bus, heartbroken at the fact that I loved this job. I really loved the company, but I didn't feel as though I was doing myself or my team any favours at all. I didn't feel as though I deserved to even be in that job or be there, which was awful. I then got married and I had a daughter called Rachel, and life was okay. I had a husband that could communicate for me, which was fantastic. He did all the phone calls, I had the support. And then the job came up for Northumbrian Water, and I'd heard so much about the company that I really wanted to go for this job, but would I ever get a job and would I ever get through an interview? So I thought, well, why not? I'll give it a go, and fantastically ended up with an interview. The fear for anybody, I guess, going for an interview is massive, but for me it seemed to be huge. On the way there, I remember thinking that, would I have to say my name when I got there? I took the letter that I had been sent for confirmation with my name on, hoping I would get to a reception desk that I could just hand the letter in, and it's awful because as an adult, it's pretty shameful really when you fear about saying a name. Anyway, I got there, and I think it was Richard Naggs approached me with a really friendly smile. He knew my name and he shook my hand and said my name, and I thought, right, that's first hurdle over. I don't have to say my name. I got through the interview by just swapping words continuously. I tried to let my side show that, the side I guess that I wanted people to think I was, but really underneath it all, I was absolutely terrified. If you think of it as an iceberg and the face is on the surface, and then you've got all the other things going on, the guilt, the fear, the shame, I still had that going on like every minute of every day. Amazingly, I got the job and I was an employee of Northumbrian Water, and that was 13 years ago, and I've never ever looked back. At the beginning, it was quite tough again with the telephone. Luckily, I worked for water treatment sites, so we didn't have external customers ringing the sites. They didn't actually answer the phone with their names anyway, so I thought, oh, that's okay. But I worked for 2 sites that started with W, Whittledean and Warkworth. Couldn't say W words, so that was a bit of a stumbling block when ordering chemicals, for example, and then the mask and the delivery address. So I'm being honest, I would have stammered on things like that. I would have stammered on when they asked me my name, and again I would always feel as though I was letting the side down and letting myself down. Then my speech took a real nosedive. Unfortunately, my marriage broke down and my communication support completely vanished. So here I was with a child to raise on my own. I loved my job and I wanted that to go really well, but I had real communication difficulties. I remember getting on a bus and I wanted to go to Newcastle. I couldn't say N-words, and there was about 3 people behind me, and I took so long to say where I wanted to go that the bus driver asked me to leave the bus. It might not be a lot to some people, but I think to be asked to leave a bus just because you can't say where you want to go is massive. So I sat on a bench near the bus stop and I broke my heart, and I thought, how am I ever going to raise a child to be successful and strong if I can't even catch a bus? So that was a bit of a turning point, and to be honest, Rachel has been that person that at first I needed to do it for her, and as my journey's progressed, it's for me and her, which is lovely. As I say, at work, a lot of things went really well. I love my job, which was brilliant. I worked for a brilliant team. But things that happened within the company were really stressful for me. And one of them, which was really stressful, turned into a massive positive in the end, was the employee roadshows. As you know, we have these roadshows with Northumbrian Water where leadership and colleagues and everyone in the business comes together every year to talk about what we do well and everybody's achievements. And, you know, it's really a lovely occasion. But for me, it was something that I was absolutely terrified. You know, I had to click on that accept button on the email. There was no avoiding, but how was I going to cope with this day? And I'm talking about losing sleep, maybe a week up to every roadshow. We get a name badge as we arrive. You know, would I be able to distract whoever's giving them out enough time so they can find my own badge? Because I couldn't say without stammering my name. And then there was the social aspect of the roadshows, which the person that I wanted to be really wanted to love that part. But would someone who didn't maybe know me ask me what I do? Administrator, I couldn't say administrator, so would I just make up something? Would I change my title? What would I do? And then it got into the main room and we would branch off with directors for that brainstorming session. And one in particular, we had about a row of 6 people and I was on the end. We had to introduce ourselves, and I just really wanted just the world to swallow me up. Here I was in front of a director of a company that I adored, and I wasn't going to be able to say my name. I had loads of ideas too that I wanted to contribute, but it got to me and the stammer won as usual, and I really, really struggled on my name. I was really choked up. I didn't add anything to that session, but I had so many ideas. And then when we moved back to listening to Heidi and to watching videos about people's achievements, just absolutely by magic, another colleague appeared, Andy Kelly, to tell us his story about the Maguire programme and how this 4-day intensive course had completely changed his life around. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'd actually just by chance watched a documentary on this programme a few days earlier, and here I was listening to a colleague talk about how his life had been changed around by the support of Northumbrian Water. So I went away that day and I spoke to a couple of friends, and I thought, well, what can harm if I had a chat with my line manager? He's had the courage to do that, so why shouldn't I really? So I did have a word with my line manager, Alan Willoughby, and he was so supportive. In fact, I think I just cried the whole chat because I was so emotional. I didn't really want anybody at work to know that I had this problem, but actually, looking back, after I got help, a lot of people had already noticed anyway, but it's that perception, I guess, that you don't want people to know that you've got something wrong. He got in touch with HR, and HR were equally as amazing. And I thought, why didn't I do this years ago? I'd already worked for the company for years prior to this, and I thought, why wasn't I just honest about this earlier? Not long after that, I was joining my first intensive 4-day residential course in Newcastle, and I remember getting to the door and going back to the car, and I think I did that about 3 times. And I thought, no, Lisa, get a grip. You need to really show yourself that you can do this. And I just kept remembering that I wanted to do this for Rachel as well. So I started this intensive course. It was really difficult. It was 7 in the morning till maybe 10 at night. It learnt me to believe in myself more. There's no cure for stammering, so it teaches you to really believe in yourself and just be exactly who you are. It was amazing and it was absolutely life-changing, and I did challenges on that course that will stay with me forever. I spoke to over 100 people in Newcastle, strangers. I stood up on a soapbox in Northumberland Street and did a speech. And I think I said my name like 4 times at the beginning or something like that, just because I could say it. And I was really proud, and I've been on refresher courses and many, many courses since then. I became a coach on the Maguire programme last November because I wanted to give something back. I wanted to be that role model that I saw in people on my first course. So I became a coach last November after an assessment weekend, which actually was in the same hotel as I'd done my first course, which was really special. I'm studying at the moment to be a course instructor and hope to pass that in a few weeks, and that's really exciting. Again, it's another challenge, but I want to be that person that I always wanted to be, and I don't want anything to hold me back anymore. I've been involved in lots of things since finding my voice. Like I say, I've become a coach. To give something back to Northumbrian Water, I never say no to joining things, so I'm a wellbeing champion, and I'm in the communications group. I just love to be involved somewhere. and I'm hoping that continues. I've got some fundraising ideas this year for our sponsor charity WaterAid. You know, why, you might say, well, why couldn't she fundraise before? But you don't actually realise how much communication is involved. And setting up something like that, it still involves speaking. So I can do things like that now and give something back. So I guess my life from that moment in, you know, at school and the occasion with the bus, they're not really things I like to think about too often, but they're part of the story, and I wanted you to know it in full context so that you would appreciate how thankful I am of the support of this company. It's an amazing company that does so much for the community, but it does so much for the staff as well. It cares, and that care has, like I say, just, I can't even begin to describe how much it's changed my life. So I would just really like to end with a little clip from that same interview, that first time that I decided to just be out there with it all, and here it is.
No matter if you've got something wrong with you, as long as you work on it, whether it be weight or, you know, in my case, speech, I wanted Rachel to know that no matter what you had or what you struggled with, as long as you can be seen to doing something about it, that's the most important thing.
So I just wanted to finish really by saying that the main starting point for me was being a good role model, and we've had the most fantastic relationship because I've had that speech to be able to do things with her and really show her that you can do anything with the right support. She just started university to become a pharmacist, and she inspires me every day. Lisa Nealan, thank you very much. Thank you just so much.
So about a week ago, Lisa Nealan got in touch with me and asked if she could have the challenge of a lifetime. I knew Lisa from last year when we talked about International Stammering Awareness 2016. We supported Lisa then, and she wanted an even bigger challenge this year. International Stammering Awareness Day 2017 is on October the 22nd, Sunday, October the 22nd. And what Lisa wanted to do was to speak to a really challenging senior audience to prove that all the progress that she's made with her own speech really was real and that she could really do it. So what better to do than invite us to come and talk to the executive leadership team, the ELT at Northumbrian Water, 9 directors and the chief executive. And you know, we've just seen Lisa today absolutely raise her game. She's walked in with pride. She's talked to us about her story. I think I saw all of my colleagues' hearts really warming, and we gave her a massive round of applause at the end. We're so proud of what Lisa has done. We're so proud of Lisa's story. And it's a big shout out for International Stammer Awareness Day on the 22nd of October 2017. Well done to Lisa.
So I've just heard Lisa telling us her story in the boardroom, and how incredibly impressive was that to listen to somebody speak so articulately, so passionately, when clearly communicating and speaking has been such a challenge for her all her life. I think, you know, it was a humbling experience, an inspirational experience, but one thing that really landed on me was that, you know, we were able to give her the confidence to come forward and to start talking about something that she wanted to overcome so that she could live the life that she wanted to live. And I would really hope that anybody else in the business who has a challenge that we could help with would feel some confidence from Lisa's story, that they would be able to come forward and we could work together to see how we could find a better way for them to be able to fulfill their potential. Lisa is flying high now. Her daughter has just gone to university. That was wonderful to hear. She's living the life that she always wanted to live. We've played a part in that, but massive credit to her, because she's the one who's done that for herself. And, you know, if we can be there to put our helping hand at the beginning, and to give that support, then we would be wanting to do that for any one of the people that works for us. So thank you, Lisa, for sharing your story. But if you're listening to this and thinking that you want to do something too, then now's the time, and we're ready and waiting to talk.